Welcome to the Marketing Mirror. As we take you on an adventure into social media with Sue Ann of Right Mix for Business and co-host Jamie Shine of Clearly Conveyed Communications. Sue Ann and Jamie invite you to share in all the latest as we find out if social media is broken, what to do about it, and how it changes your marketing today.
Sue Ann and Jamie will explore the latest in social media marketing and cover the topics you need to know.
Hello, and welcome. I'm Sue Ann with Right Mix for Business. I'm here with Jamie Shine of Clearly Conveyed Communications, our dear co-host, and we are so happy that you're here today at the Marketing Mirror. Thank you for checking it out. We appreciate it. How are you today, James?
Can't complain. The sun's shining.
You're not going to complain? Well, we have something important to celebrate when it comes to Jamie today because she's celebrating 14 years in business, ladies and gentlemen. 14 years. Congratulations, James. That's a big milestone.
Thank you.
It's
I
weird
almost missed
when you start to pass decades.
Yeah.
As I have in business.
I know. It
Sometimes
makes you feel old too, but it's a good thing.
Feel a little scary. So, again, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. Please join in and leave your comments, leave your questions, leave your 2 cents, whether you're watching the show live or catching it on the replay. We really, really appreciate it. We appreciate it if you can like and or subscribe, as always, because we're working hard here at the Marketing Mirror to bring you all the latest scoops. And we had a pretty fun summer social soiree last week with our special guest, Lisa Sicard. It feels like we covered quite a few topics, Jamie. What do you think? I think that was a big show.
Yes, I loved it. I think we should make that a regular feature. Sometimes it's nice just to catch up, and everything's always changing on social and in digital, so it was nice to just kind of do a roundup and catch up on where we're at currently.
Yes, and our friend who did the impromptu live with us, Miss Eileen Smith, also has offered to come back and chat with us again some other time, which will be fun too. So let me just jump in with our opening today. Of course, we have Marketing Millie to give you a little intro into what the show is going to be about, because this week we have a really big show, a really important topic. We're going to be moving. We left off, we weren't quite finished with talking about your blog and your website and its place in the digital world in the era of AI. But we're going to take it from a little bit of a different perspective and then get into that meat of that again to finish off the episode. So here's Marketing Millie with a quick introduction for today.
Thank you for checking out the Marketing Mirror. We've been talking about the role of your website and blog, how social media has changed, including essential content strategy and marketing trends, and how everything in the digital world is evolving in this mega-fast AI era. But changes in search and how your content gets seen and found is perhaps the most important issue in the latest digital turbulence we're experiencing. You can produce great content, but it's irrelevant if no one sees it. Search is a new frontier in AI retrieval, so your content gets found. In today's episode, we're going to zoom out and then zoom in to uncover the most important topics on the current state of AI, the battle over content origin, and the very best top tips for leveraging search via AI as it moves with the future of search. Tune in for keys to unlock AI notice for you.
I don't know about you, James, but I feel like this is a really important topic today. Because, as Millie said, you can produce great content, but it's irrelevant if it doesn't get found, if it doesn't get seen, if it doesn't get consumed, right?
Yes, and obviously AI is a big part of that. So we need to understand how AI search works, how it affects our content and how we can show up to be cited there.
So I'm pulling up our wonderful screen share of slides for today. Oops, that's it. Make sure I get the right screen. There it is. Wow. Wow, pretty cool. I've been cheating a little bit just to give you a little background, ladies and gents, in testing some of the AI thumbnails lately. Do we like them? They're different than what we've been doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a
But
good one.
yeah, well, and you know what? So the origin of content is one of the questions that keeps popping up. Like the fight is it human made or is it AI made? And when it's AI made, it can't be copyrighted, but there's some issues about that because AI is collecting a lot of data that's being used in a lot of ways. And so I'm excited to take a look into this. So let's just jump right in. So we're living in a live experiment as we experience a total infusion of AI in the digital and real world. There's no manual or exact science explaining the outcome of the AI infusion in almost every area, from medicine and law to arts and entertainment. The impact is phenomenal. And yet, everyone, even the tech founders, the gurus themselves, everyone is guessing more than knowing what the outcome or answers will turn out to be as AI becomes more and more powerful and more prevalent. There's still a lot of speculation at this point.
Oh, absolutely. And just a quick aside, not to take us down another route, but obviously the OpenAI agent breach or whatever they're calling it is getting a lot of headlines right now that their AI agents broke out of their test environment and hacked into another AI company and they don't know how it happened. So that's kind of scary. It's being reported all over the place right now. I'm sure people in our audience have seen it. So there's a lot of questions about AI all over the place. not
Yes.
just not
Yes.
just
And we introduced that really in our very first live when we really dove in talking and thinking about education and brain health and
yes.
some of those physiological and biological studies that show some of the effects of AI on the brain. And it's kind of amazing some of what you'll even see people making like a statement sometimes like, oh my gosh, I saw a guy today on YouTube and it was like, oh my gosh, my Claude was out and I didn't know what to do. Like he couldn't
Oh,
function. He's been
geez.
creating content for a while, but he's like, I've been 2 weeks straight on the Claude and now I felt like totally stuck, which was really weird. But we talked about that before with people at the idea brainstorming board and being like, huh, I can't just ask
It's
AI.
it's so funny, but it's so true. I saw this parody video. I think it was on Instagram. So a lot of companies are starting to cut back their AI use because it's costing them too much money because they have to have these pro accounts and
Yeah,
enterprise accounts.
that's
And so they're
actually
buying all these coins and tokens and their employees are just breezing through them. So they're trying to get them to cut back. So this whole parody video, this lady was on a Zoom call with her team and she was saying, "Okay, so something about we need ideas, whatever. Like, what do we do?" Because she was trying to get them to stop relying on AI so much. And they're all like, go to Chat GPT, like the whole thing. But it was trying to highlight how people have stopped thinking for themselves at all.
And
They
it's
didn't.
getting to be a question of, I call it tokenism coming up in the presentation here. The
Oh, that's a good term.
tokenism of AI because our companies, when they start running these budgets, think about a lot of different departments running AI for different functions and different types of research and different types of outputs, small clerical things or big, heavy, deep things or computer generated things, because a lot of these apps now have, or these tools have, like computers within them if you want to go really deep or even build an app within the AI. So, if you imagine all the different departments, how much these tokens can start flying up the flagpole, and now are you
Right.
getting the ROI that you expected, thinking you're replacing everything with AI? And we'll get there, but we're all figuring it out together. That's
Yes.
where we are. We're all figuring out together, and everyone is a participant, whether you're willingly participating or not. But AI and human collaborations are infinitely interesting. So exploring the AI revolution as it's happening is exciting and fun, and it's an opportunity to learn. And so that's what I think is most important at this moment. We need to open our minds and do the real research and learning rather than simply repeating the big AI headlines, both positive and negative. And I think there's been from the get go a lot of like naysayers. I still like to write. I'm still going to write because I don't want my brain to atrophy and die. I'm sorry. And
Yes.
it helps me think through what I'm working on. It helps me formulate all the research somehow in my own way. And I like it. It's fun to me. So, but other people that, don't write as well or like to write or want to spend the time doing it, just out of their head, they're going to use AI. Now, that's not to say that I'm not using AI in a number of ways, including maybe even researching and, getting set up for the writing and ideas,
Right.
brainstorming. But I think what's most important is that that book, Daniel Kahneman, I think is the
Yes.
writer. It's Think Fast, Think Slow. So
Yes.
what I
It's a
think
great book.
is that we don't want to jump to conclusions or jump to something with our, without thinking it through and learning about it and just going like with our bias. And so I think that's so important. That's kind of what's at issue, I guess, in my mind here when we're talking about this. So let's zoom out now and let's start taking a look from a wider world view. And let's try to debunk, because I know I'm personally having some confusion about what I heard about how all this works and about like the data centers and all the stuff. So it's been evolving in my mind. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So let's debunk what you may have been hearing out there, because knowledge is power. And when we look deeper to understand, when we go think slow instead of just jumping to the bias or to the conclusion and thinking fast, we can discuss things more coherently. Because we've been hearing a lot about the sky is falling, the sky is falling. AI is here, right? We're running around. So why? Because people are naturally resistant to change, right? But the hyped up
Mhm.
rhetoric, often the negative stuff, and this is coming out of the people who are developing it sometimes, and how it's repeated, and it's adding, I think, to the panic and the growth of naysayers who have no idea really of the nuances and the actual evolution of artificial intelligence, language learning models, generative artificial intelligence, robotics, and more. What do you think, James? There's a lot of the sky is falling going on, so we want to, clear our heads. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of challenges with it. As you said, we're working through it in real time. I understand people's concern with the data centers. We've experienced that here in Ohio. They cause a lot of issues that have to be addressed. So, but yeah, overall, I mean, let's make sure we're solving actual problems and not hypothetical ones.
And when I first heard, like 2 years ago, when I first, when AI started getting to be more prevalent and people were talking about it, using it and developing it out more like publicly instead of like just AI in the background that we've had going on for many years. Um, I think that I forget. I'm not sure how I want to say it, but I think that what happened is that people are told you're going to lose your jobs. Like 50% of all jobs are going to be gone. And we talked about before the college graduations where the students are booing, artificial intelligence. And here's the problem: it's not something you can snuff out.
Yeah,
I
I think the
really don't
cat's out of the
believe.
bag.
I don't think you can snuff it out, even if you want to. So I think that we need to then take a more intelligent approach and do the deeper dive and don't be, so alarmed that the sky is falling. But still, it's good to be skeptical and to continue to ask the questions, as you said. And in our very first live, like I said earlier, we did take a critical look at information and data concerning AI and the brain. We questioned AI in education and looked at the latest research from the likes of MIT and Carnegie Mellon University, or CMU, as we say locally, among others. And there were actual physiological and other brain health matters that we thought were worth paying attention to. And especially in education, because, that starts with young people and young developing brains and
Right.
minds and thinking. And you if you don't have to solve a problem, then you don't know how to solve a problem. Getting the answer isn't really giving you the wisdom to be able to be innovative or creative or to come to different conclusions or to experiment. And all of those things are so important to our development. So this is still important. So we don't want to have any atrophied or non-working brains, but there are a lot of other scares that we're hearing. You mentioned another example today. We've talked about other things where people had their book, revoked from publishing over AI issues and so on. And some of them are worth doing a little deeper dive to be sure that we are understanding everything. So we're going to we're going to do a little AI fact checker here. So, are the predictions true or false when it comes to the impact of jobs? And I was listening to the All In podcast, and those guys are super brilliant. They're from all different walks of industry and business. I think they're all million to billionaires also. David Sachs is on there. I think he's very smart in technology and innovation of technology and in the tech frontier. He was also just finished his invitation to serve in the White House as a tech counsel, I guess, and working with things. And so when these four guys talk, I kind of pay attention because I feel like they're they're in the innovation. They're not just talking about it from, like an observation perspective like we are. And they said that some of these predictions about jobs, for example, by 2030 to be cut by 50%. If scale that to we're now in 2026, it doesn't appear that it's moving as quickly in that direction as it appears to be. Now, here's another thing, Jamie. This happened, I think, during COVID. I think that a lot of companies use these situations to cut their workforce for other reasons and then
Oh,
blame it
sure.
on that. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, companies are always looking at the bottom line and trying to cut costs. And unfortunately, they look at your employees are your greatest investment and they can do a lot for your company. But a lot of companies look at them as a cost center only. But we're already there has been a lot of job loss due to AI or cited to AI, but we're already starting to see some reversal in that because of the consequences that companies have suffered from. They tell themselves that they can do all this stuff with AI, and what they're finding is they can't, because you're not replacing human thought and human experience. You're simply supplementing it and trying to have it automate menial tasks and things that don't require human thought. So I saw a case study with a company who was going to, they said they could replace all of their customer service agents with AI. And it turns out they can't do that because a lot of times in customer service, you need your experience of being a human being and dealing with situations that an AI tool doesn't have. And so they've already started to walk back on that. You're seeing it in engineering. You're seeing it in a lot of different industries already where companies who tried to be early adopters of replacing their people with AI, it has not turned out well. And they're
Well, we
actually not saving money because again with the mega AI usage, they're actually spending a lot of money and they're not getting as good of return on that as they did with people.
and we cited some information a few weeks back about the disconnect about how companies view the service and answer bots and the AI to handle frontline customer service, customer inquiries, but people who are using those services aren't as in alignment. They're not
Yeah.
as happy about it, and so
No.
there's that. I noticed that I always like to talk about Brooke Sellis. I think she's great, and she's very into the social care side of social media and organic social that we love. And she was talking about a case where a big bank had their app go down and they didn't speak about it. Like they didn't come
Oh,
out in
gee.
front on social. And think about the trust people have where their money is, and that we're so used to having these apps that we can check our balance, we can make transfers, we can pay our bills, and to have that go black and not have any response from the company, like just dead silence,
It's horrible.
when social media allows you the ability to do some marketing and some goodwill with your customers and to assure them that they can still trust their money in your hands, and you're working on the problem, you're on top of it,
Right.
some sort of communication. And she was saying this isn't just an isolated incident and therefore it's a good lesson. But so the job loss predictions, these guys kind of felt overall, a lot of the predictions in the naysayer side, they felt overall weren't coming to real life. They weren't coming to be. And we talked about the impact of education and the impact on education, and they agree and mentioned, as we do, that is something to pay attention to. When we get further into the slideshow today, we're going to have some information from Christopher Penn that's going to surprise you about not only the impact on education or how to view education when it comes to AI and language learning models, but also about these checkers where people are getting thrown off or accused of writing or producing with AI in cases when they're not. And you'll find that. You guys stay tuned because you're going to find that super interesting. Then so moving forward, the tokenism of AI, you referred to a little bit already. I call it the tokenism of AI usage. This is that companies are finding out that, look, I have a couple friends actually who are really far ahead of the curve using AI and AI tools and language learning models and creating apps and doing stuff way at the forefront of the technology. They're like top users in these spaces. And even they, on an individual, like solopreneur level, are going through hundreds of dollars a
Yeah.
month in tokens, and even producing stuff with the cartoons that I'm trying to do with our little voice lip syncing and all that. Like this stuff is not just open source, free and easy.
Right.
And these companies have to think about what is the ROI in the end. Maybe the employees were less expensive as they start to add it up. Now think about it. You have engineering working on something. You have accounting doing stuff. You have all those administrative tasks that you're talking about that don't require the creativity and so much human thought and input and innovation, but that also suck from the power of all the tokens that get used through these. This is a problem, and these guys talk about it also on another level in the All In podcast. I'll give you guys a link for all this stuff in the show notes later, but The thing they talk about too is that there's a kind of a fight going on about whether it should be open source or whether it should all be a paid for thing to participate in AI, because AI is taking these data centers, and is the AI data use worthy? Is it worthy not only on a company level, but is it worthy on these buildings and new energy levels? And one of the things that you and I talked about before was we worry about energy and use of energy and how does it affect, the neighborhood, the bills, the local economy. And what these guys said is that people have that all wrong. For one thing, the water isn't like a big giant like hose sucking in water. It's actually an internal loop where they regenerate the water over and over. It's once it's in the system, it regenerates. You're not constantly sucking the river dry to run it. Like we kind of thought, we didn't understand. At least I didn't. Now I remember, like I said, 2 years ago when I first found out a little bit about these data centers, my understanding was that they were very much self-reliant and that they were adding to the economy energy, not taking from it. And these guys seem to point to indications in data and information, and they're, into the budgets of everything too. But they seem to think that people are seeing it wrong and that there's benefits to it, and it should actually lower, not higher, as it produces more energy. But they're also talking about how the ability to capture that energy is going to become a commodity. And to big corporations who are going to have a lot of demand for that, there's going to be, we don't know how that's going to go. There's been talk about like having individual like energy packets that you can like house in your home or in your business that kind of works from the grid and then gives back to the grid when you're not using it. Like it's like you're helping the grid on this individual basis. There's all kinds of stuff. A lot of this is over my head, but I still am looking into it and trying to understand it, because that's what we're all trying to do. But the worthiness comes into things like Friedberg, one of the guys on the Ellen podcast. He's kind of the scientist guy, and his businesses are doing things like figuring out how to feed people and do things with agriculture through the research that you can get through all these tools. So what happens with AI and how you can research is that you have access to like deeper and more extensive research and quicker ability to get it than ever before in our history. And so what they're finding is that, these guys, these scientists, these engineers that are using the $1 billion of tokens, they're digging so deeply into the information that they're having these huge leaps forward in science and engineering, and like how to modify agriculture so things grow healthier, or you don't have, different contaminants. You can do it in a different way. Just so much stuff. But what they're saying is that if these companies start to, like, you heard where Claude released something, then they pulled it back. I just started looking into that. But what these guys said about that situation is that what happens is when you don't let everybody have all the information available, when you start gating levels of how deep you can look into things, then you start creating monopolies, or maybe like the richest companies, the biggest companies win. And that's another thing, because that gets into antitrust and things like that. So then the question about to regulate or not comes up, right? And should we regulate, for guardrails, or yes and no, and why? And here's the problem with that. There's antitrust issues, there's data monopoly issues, things like that. But there's also, think about this, if we regulate it by asking the government to come in rather than to regulate like from a CERN or, a panel, something within the industry, if we take it to the government, we just screw everybody. Because it's like, imagine an FAA of the internet, or of open source, or of language learning models and AI. Imagine an FAA that everything that comes out has to be pre-approved like models of planes do that take up to 6 years. Right? So when we don't want to, we do want to have a safe and usable AI and healthy, use of language learning models and deeper research. But then, do we, we don't want people to be able to, make nuclear bombs because that's in that deep research as well. And, here's part of the thing too. I think that things, no matter what it is, it's not the tool, it's not the gun, it's the person using the gun that's the hazard. It's not the compute, it's what you do with the compute, right? What you do with the technology. Are you hacking or are you creating something, creative and good for the world? Like, there's always going to be bad intent, I think, with every tool, and that might be part of the problem. What's your comments on all of this?
Well, and that's typically why we end up having government intervention. Yes, they do tend to overstep a lot, but people are people, and especially in business, businesses don't make the right decisions. They're concerned about their bottom line. They're not concerned about the world or the environment or anything else. The whole data centers thing, speaking from actual experience, because for some reason, Ohio tends to be ground zero for these. I'm not sure how that happened. It's a landfill problem. We need them, but nobody wants them because of what they do.
We're
They
building them
drive up
here
energy
too.
costs. I mean, we've already seen this in reality. It's not a hypothetical situation. I think why people are angry is they tend to put these things in rural areas. You don't see them putting them in wealthy areas because wealthy people don't want to deal with this. And it's driving up communities' energy costs extensively. So why should the community that they're in have to pay for these? That's the part that's bullshit.
Yeah,
If
the
these
way
companies should have to pay their own bills.
I'll have to give you the link to listen to the All In podcast and the way these guys explain how that works, because they eased my mind a lot about how we understand it. And I thought that it drove up those things, but they're saying not so. Once it's kind of like established, there's a lot of different reasons why it's actually a good resource for the economy and for the local jobs and just different things. But it shouldn't drive it up. It should actually even it out, or maybe even take it down, because there's going to be a large draw from the people using it that are companies that are going to offset the residents. Something like that is how they
And
explain
that
it.
is what has not been happening so far here.
That could be the case,
It
definitely.
has been driving up. Like,
The
I don't
other
know if
part,
the whole thought is someday we'll get to that, but that's why people are, it's a landfill problem.
the
Nobody wants them in their backyard
well,
because
do you
they
think
cause a lot of issues.
windmills for energy are good for the land? Because I'll tell you, that's absolutely not the case. They're terrible for the land, and they're
And
pollution
that's why
because
nobody
they
wants this
fall
stuff where they
apart.
are.
Yeah,
Why
so
don't we
there's
put data centers in wealthy communities and see how they handle it?
well,
Because they
they're going to
always go
be.
for rural areas.
Well, they need the space. They're big. But they shouldn't be just, it should be, they're going to be everywhere is my opinion, at least the way they have it mapped out. But here's the thing too. The question is, do we need and want them? And the question is too, like, from a I guess more world economic, social, political point of view, there's the question of, like, they're already talking about this new AI that China just introduced that's blowing away all of our top things, but they borrow the information, the data, which gets back to who owns the data. And because can you train from other AI's training, right? Um,
Or if you're open AI, you can just hack into other companies. So yeah, no, that's what
Lisa's
they're doing.
mentioning the loud of the wind turbines, and they only have a short lifespan, and then that metal lays in. They don't have a way. They're so big and whatever. They're letting them lay in the fields in disrepair, and so now we've got this big metal waste in these fields, plus all the land that it takes. That really spreads out, and it's not producing like in a way that everybody can feel. If it's going to run business and life and also make us at the forefront of technology, because is that a factor? something that we need to worry about as a country? I'm not sure. But the other thing is, do we want to turn this if we get government intervention and if we make everybody not open source, is then the internet and everything we do on it become a pay only, which then doesn't make it the fair, the available to everybody that it is now. I'm searching for the words to say it exactly, but maybe you know what I mean, right? So David Sachs's take on Anthropic, who he feels is one of the company's founder, he feels, or the guys, the CEO now, he feels is one of the people leading the way to push for government intervention, which these guys overall don't feel is a good idea, because everything that government gets in, it slows down, it's red tape, it takes forever, you can't get a permit, it's on and on, everything's a big ordeal. And we want this, the software is moving too fast to have that bogged down process. It'll kill what it's all about, kind of the evolution of tech and software and open source and all of it. So, but he says, here's his take, which is kind of funny. Anthropic, who is, Claude, of course, they said that they're branding themselves as the safest option, right? And then they're promoting that we regulate it to uphold that, yep, we're the safest option. But then this deters others from being able to be in the market. So it's kind of also protecting their leading spot in a way, which we don't want, because we want competition. Competition's always a better deal for consumers. And in the end, profit is their main goal, like the goal. The real goal is the profit side. That's his take. But anyway, the whole thing's interesting. I think we need to look into it further. And I think you're right. Sometimes what they say on paper and what comes out in the real world are not going to be the same thing. But also, there's a lot of angles to it that we need to consider, because do we in fact need it? I know I love my internet and my speech. So it may feel scary, I think, the whole thing, but because we're business owners, we're good at evolving and bobbing and weaving, but let's try running, not away from, but into the new technology and the reality of an AI world, I say. But I also say, let's go with an open-minded approach and a learning attitude. Let's think of the possibilities that go beyond our imagination right now, because some of what we're forecasting as negative, we haven't seen come to fruition, and maybe what's that thing where you make things happen because you wish it into existence, kind of, like, you know what I mean? You create.
You manifest it?
Yeah, manifest. That's a great word. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to lead with our fears, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We want to lead with imagination and with learning and with, trying to dig deep and find out what's really real, because, we don't want the bad stuff. We want to make sure that it's not affecting people's bills. They're high enough. But we do know that they run on natural gas, which right now is the cleanest option, since nobody wants to do nuclear. I think we have a fear of that. But, it's clean energy, and it doesn't just keep sucking water. It's a closed system. And these are things that maybe we didn't all know. I know I didn't. I saw things from at the beginning. I thought it's all good. It's underwritten by, the main companies using it. Then I saw it's all bad, and then people protesting, and then, you never know. So we want to keep looking at all sides so we can figure it out. But wait, there's a topic that we do need to mention that's also where some thought and maybe concern, and that's that thing you were saying already: accuracy and implementation inconsistencies and problems. So we still need to do our due diligence, and this may still cause mayhem, right? One note we talked about last week, you guys, was the YouTube and its new rules. And in part, these new rules were, I think, sparked by the huge onset of content uploads since AI's insurgents, right? So we mentioned a lot of the ambiguity of many of the guidelines, like including the use of AI. Like I said, I don't think I'm using it in the way that they're wanting to flag. I think I'm using it like fictitiously and in a way that's obvious to people. But like, I'm so afraid of like breaking the rules, I just write AI on every one of our videos now, just in case. But also, how they don't want you to use structured or templated content. How do you think that works, James? Because, you know, you have a run a show, or some shows do like the same segments each week and that's what their people come to check out. Like, that's a
Well,
crazy
from what
rule.
I've seen, it's they're trying to get you have these accounts that grow based on using other people's content. It's not on using the same structure or a template or something. It's simply taking other people's content and reposting it. You see this all the
Okay.
time. So if you're not adding to it in some measurable way, like these
Yeah,
reaction
see, I'm
videos that are
thinking
so big.
structured or template is like stories, and like how the brain connects with the story is what we want. We want that emotional connection. We want that like memorable connection. We want all those things. And that's from a template sometimes, because the brain can relate to that before, you know, the rest of us catches up. It's so quick with, you know, recognizing structure of story. Remember we talked about all that? So that confuses me. Like, are they saying you can't have, but if you put it the way you're putting it, that changes the light. And that's
But
maybe what they mean.
what's on the screen right now doesn't even refer to templates or
No, no,
anything.
that's
It's
something
talking
I didn't
about
get to talk about last week. So I'm just saying these are some of the things we did talk about. Also about whether it's educational or not. The channels, they're going to decide if it's educational enough. And then I'm like, what is educational enough? And how do you measure that? Well, here's one that I couldn't find because, you know me, I'm not good at doing it real quick. But here's one that is about you can't promote the promotion of other people's content, even if you have permission, could be a reason to not be monetized. That floors me because I promote, like this whole show, I'm talking about other people's content. I have stuff from Andy and stuff from Christopher Penn. I have stuff I just mentioned, Brooke. I have stuff from Kaylee Moore. Like, I have other people's stuff that I talk about constantly. And affiliate marketers or people that show tech, they're talking about other people's stuff. It's saying even if you have permission, this could be a reason to not allow you to monetize or to kick your channel off. And also it notes up top here, this list is not exhaustive. So in case we want to throw anything else at you, we can just add that in. The other thing I want to mention about this that's funny is he had like so many comments on this video. This is actually a screenshot of the video that I caught just after it was done live. So I left comments in the comment because he had a whole live chat going on that was very active. But I got there after, so I left a couple comments in the comment about like, wow, I'm confused, it's ambiguous, and I want to follow the rules, but this is confusing. And this video is gone. It got tons of people weighing in, and I find it suspicious. Why is it gone off of YouTube? Interesting, do you think?
I have no idea. I don't even know what the video was about.
It was about all the new rules on YouTube, and people were like, "Wow, this doesn't make sense. How ambiguous is this?" And what they just get to, and then people that have been getting kicked off that have been on there. Some of the channels that have been getting kicked off are 20-year channels that have like 1 million followers, so they're making a lot of money, but they just kicked them off. They closed. They said, "Nope, you broke whatever rule." See, that's the problem. It feels like that sliding scale that I told you about. How are you supposed to do things right if it's like you don't know what it is and it's changing? But anyway, so I don't know. This the promoting other people's content confuses me. Then there's this problem. Meta announced a mass correction 2 days ago for group and community accounts that were shut down like crazy on Facebook recently. Actually, I think this has been happening all year. Have you had any clients or people talking about this, or groups you're in have this happen, Jamie? Because
No.
they're blaming it, Facebook's blaming it on AI, and they're saying they'll fix it. But people are running off and jumping on skull. I mean, some of these shutdowns include long-held, huge, active communities group accounts, and people were really upset. They started opening their communities on school and everywhere else. But a couple of days ago, Meta was leaving massive notes on X that they were working on it. So this is AI, interfering on that end. And then here's another one. There's these Frankenstein recipes coming out of Google, Google's AI. So there's a guy on X who's a chef, and his post is he's with I think I have it somewhere. I have his company name somewhere, but anyway, he says AI gets things wrong all the time. He gets that, but he says he likes to call the AI generated recipes Frankenstein recipes. He said it paints a good picture of what they actually are, because they're derived from any number of recipes, taking one bit from another bit one at a time, but then smushing them together to make it look like it's an authentic, trustworthy recipe. He says it looks real, but it isn't. So these recipes aren't tested, they haven't been proofread, they haven't been checked by a human, they haven't been made in an actual kitchen or ever been tasted, and they're riddled with mistakes, they're misleading, and he's saying don't, get your recipes off of Google AI at all. And I know people like to use this for recipes. Have you ever run into this?
I do not ask AI for recipes.
The chefs, there was another chef too that was left some good comments about it. Here's the thing. Okay, since I ran a catering production and event design business of my own company for decades, and did a lot of corporate work and know a little bit about it, I can tell you this: there's many times you're making a recipe and you're going from 8 or 10 people as the recipe, and you're making it for 100, and I promise you can't just even multiply that recipe by 10 or by, what I mean, like 10 times the recipe, because spices don't work that way. You 10 times spices, you'll kill things many times. You have to know how to, adjust, even though you're, 10 timing a recipe. That's not really how it works. Then there's baking, which is chemistry, and you can't alter those recipes at all and have it turn out. So this is an interesting one, because Chris Penn does this content authenticity statement on his work, and he explains why. I'll give all these links, I say in the description later, but so I get them in order. But there's legality reasons why he thinks you should do that. There's ethical reasons why he thinks you should do that, and then AI issues why he thinks you should do that. And what's funny is he makes a note here about 90% of his, or 99% of his is, human written, like in this particular article, right? Written by him, 99%. And how I've been doing mine, since I use it so little for writing, is I actually have been putting in an article like, okay, this section was, written by Cast Magic AI, or this section was whatever it is, you know what I mean? And spelling it out that way. So he did this experiment, why I'm talking about this, to understand how AI detection works, because we've been having a lot of pushback about people, even I know writers who have been getting having somebody that they've done work for say, this was written by AI and I don't want to pay you whatever we agreed on because you used AI or something. And the truth is they may not have touched AI actually. But so how is that working? So what he did is he kind of reverse engineered and tried to figure out scientifically how AI detection works. And what he determines is that writing is a code. And because of their very nature, AI outputs have much more uniformity than human outputs when it comes to, he says, anything. And that's their nature. And that's and that nature is not what only makes them useful, but what makes it give away that it's always AI generated. It's that typical AI work. You know what I mean? So your AI generated content, you can feel when you read it, when you look at an image or a video, you kind of know that it's AI. It's not necessarily that it's so perfect, because it's not always, and it's not glaringly wrong. It just doesn't have that skilled, it's kind of an unskilled use, right? So what he says is that humans are actually often mediocre as well. And there's I don't know. He talks about the cadence of patterns and the intricacies, and he explains that that writing can actually be decoded. It can be measured and quantified, and he says they've been doing that for years through NLP, and he even talks about IBM using it. Remember when they were playing chess, and when they went on Jeopardy with the computer, that was all with NLP programming. So there's 60 measures for how you can measure writing to know whether it's mechanicalistically and deterministically human or not. Like these are what makes it up, so it becomes able to be read on a computer, and that it has to do with, whether we use long or short sentences, things like that. And what makes it more human is when you don't do it in the typical way. And there's actually, he actually went as far as he built, after he did the in-depth test using an array of AI tools, he made his own AI detector tool that he developed also for the experiment. And then he additionally analyzed LinkedIn posts by writers like Ann Handley and Jay Acunzo and others who are adamantly, I should say, human-only writers. And he still came to the same result either way. And there's a thing that they called like the perplexity rating, because identifying the not predictable use of the words has this perplexity rating, okay? So if it's something that's not a surprise, right? It's a measure of surprise, they called it. So it's how surprising the next predicted word in a sequence is. So there's zero surprise. Here's the example. I pledge allegiance to the, and the next word is flag. And so it has a perplexity of zero. It has zero surprise. That's what it's expecting. But if you wrote, I pledge allegiance to the rutabaga, then it would be off the charts with perplexity, because that would be a total surprise. And that's partly how AI is able to flag whether it's human or not, is the probability engine, and the perplexity, high and low perplexity, comes into how these AIs determine whether it's written by human or not. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty well known that AI is very formulaic.
Yeah, I think that people kind of think that it has more sensibility or more, or somehow they want it to be emotional or thinking, and it's really not. And he says, here's the zinger: the error rate, or the false accusation rate, is about the same across all the detectors, and it's about 15%, which means the AI detectors, all that he tested, and all of which market themselves as the most accurate, he said the most trusted AI detectors on the market will falsely accuse someone of using AI about 1 out of 6 or 7 times. Think about that. That's a lot. Don't you think?
Yeah, that's high. That's
So
crazy.
he says that this is what we have to remember. Here's his quote: all generative AI, all AI period, is probability, all of it. And all AI models are probability engines. They produce predictions based on that next word, perplexity and probability, that next sentence, that next thing. It's all ordered. But when it's unguided, then they produce the highest likely probability, which makes it become the sameness, right? And that's
Yeah.
why unguided, he points out, because the more that you prompt or give it the proper direction, the better result that you're going to get, and the more human, the more you can infuse yourself, all things. But I just wanted to point out that he said here, though, the fundamental problems overall, this is Christopher Penn again, he says the fundamental problem with AI is they're all very, very fallible. Because why? They lack of creativity in writing. But it's not just a machine thing, as I said. He said it's also human. There are crappy writers who generate crappy copy that could be, machine-like generated copy. He says there are mediocre photographers that take pictures that could be AI-generated images. There's songwriters who use templated stuff that sounds like every other song in a genre. AI could be part of all of them because it's all probability. And he says this is really problematic in, here's what we get to, education and academia, because they ask you for templated outputs. Here's an example. If you want to do an academic standard paragraph essay, there's a template that students are given. The first paragraph is your introduction. You're supposed to state premise. The last paragraph should be a conclusion, and you recap your premise. There's 3 paragraphs in the middle explaining the premise. There's recommended or required transition words to move from paragraph to paragraph. There's recommended sentence length, third-party voice, neutral point of view. Guess what it looks like? Yep, AI. It's all in this same structure. It's meant to be that way. And so, again, you could call that human slop maybe, but that's why there's confusion in how these things read it and get it wrong so much on determining whether it's all human or it's, AI created. What do you think? Pretty neat, huh?
Yeah, I think it's funny people are obsessed with the M dashes because apparently people weren't familiar with them before, but I think
I
it's
say,
much more
I say I
obvious.
trained them.
The
I trained
structure
it on that.
of the writing from AI is all the same. Like it's the same structure. So I think that's much more of a tell than anything else.
Christopher's bottom line conclusion: AI detectors, and listen up, folks, AI detectors should never ever be used for anything punitive until their false positive rate is 0. And since that's unlikely to happen anytime soon, 50% is, or 15% is a high rate.
That's
But he
very
said
high.
they should not be used in any realm, not academically and not commercially, for anything punitive, period. End of story, he says. If you or your organization uses AI detectors in a punitive fashion, like not paying a writer, just throwing an example, expect lawsuits to come your way. That's his take. Very interesting, I felt, worth mentioning. So here's where we're at now. Just to make, just to give you a quick um, reason why we have to worry about it. There's more people searching through AI. We've talked about this before. There's good search engine land. Uh, these are all statistics that Kaylee pulled in April, and so they should be the same or growing. We do have an Andy Crestodina study that came out yesterday, which actually has comparable information, but actually has a little bit different. Like she says here that the conversion is 5 times more valuable per session from traffic converting from AI. I think Andy said it was 3 times more. But interesting that, as we mentioned, I think earlier in our conversation, because it's a more like maybe AI agentic, agent searched already, because it's pared down through the AI in creating that answer, coming up with those answers, give what those results. That might be a reason why um, those are more valuable. Remember, we talked about that before. So we need to close the gap. That's our main thing. in doing AI. And she also gives us a framework to do that. So I'll take us real quickly through that. She wants you to use the content that you already have. That's helpful, don't you think, James? You don't have to start over.
Yeah, absolutely.
She says once you get your 20 top organic URLs, preferably work with the last 90 days, and you can use it through any of your data analytics. Mark down their primary keywords, but test it across the AI using keyword strings instead. Why? Because of the question engine style, right, of that. So we want to have that query, that question engine approach. And then log or screenshot that stuff, which is really helpful. Then she says the next phase is after that audit phase and working from your own content library, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel or do something new. You're going to want to do competitive citation mapping, where you're going to take those high intent queries and then run each query and identify priority gaps. So if there's something missing or there's open territory that's never been covered or things like that. So you want to see where other domains are coming up and who's answering the key word questions in your industry or product area or service space, right? And then tweak and improve. This is so easy. 1 to 2 sentences under each of your headings you should tweak so that they actually answer in just 1 to 2 sentences clearly under the heading, like give the answer, because that's like that clear and precise answer is going to be what they want to read through AI. Then content structured, so a single paragraph can be extracted without losing context. That's great because that's how you're going to get cited again when it's really inclusive. And then specific data and frameworks that offer original perspective. And we could say that Kaylee did that in her article because she gave us the visibility gap audit. She gave us the competitive citation mapping. And Andy does that in his research paper, which I'll give you a link to read about because, again, he's doing a scientific study. It was over a 1-year period. It had millions of URLs that it examined, so it's a huge study. And it's a brilliant example of original citation, drawing research-style content and thought leadership. And those are the things that are going to make you get the citation. So if you missed last week, what did you think about it, Jane?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a fun episode.
And then next week, join us for our Christmas in July celebration. Jamie's going to share some of her most brilliant ideas for holiday campaigns because you guessed it, there's no time like the lazy, hazy days of summer to start planning your holiday campaigns, your social media calendars, and special offers for the busy holiday season and last quarter. So we invite you to our Christmas in July event next Friday. I guess I will wrap it up. I thought Jane might like to. She often is the wrapper-upper. But thank you again for checking out this week's episode of The Marketing Mirror. We certainly appreciate it. And if you have questions, comments, or more information to share, please do. Thank you again. And thank you, Jamie, for your time today.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you for checking out The Marketing Mirror with your host, Sue Ann from Right Mix for Business and your co-host, Jamie Shine of Clearly Conveyed Communications. Brought to you by Right Mix for Business and ElectraCast Media. Thank you.
ElectraCast.